Welcome back to this week's episode of Pacific Indians Chatter. I'm your host, Cody Kelly, and let's run through everything Pacific Athletics. First, let's start with the Riverbend Roundup. Riverbend seasons are starting to wrap up rapidly. There's not a lot left going on out here, especially this next week upcoming. Cross Country finished their season off with their conference meet at Owensville. Macy Crecelius took home first place for the Lady Indians on the cross country side of things. Now moving over to basketball. Basketball had 3 games this week. The 7th and 8th grade Lady Indians were home against the New Haven Shamrocks on Monday night. On Monday, this saw the 7th grade pick up a big win, 36-12. And the 8th graders picked up a big win, 40-9 over the Shamrocks for the 8th grade leading the way. Emma Vondre with 12 points, Madeline Brown with 11, and Maggie Rombach with 10. The next night, the Lady Indians traveled to St. James to take on the Lady Tigers. 7th grade St. James team is undefeated, and the 8th grade team has 1 loss on the year. The Indians dropped 2 games that night to a very good St. James team. Moving on to Thursday night, the Indians hosted Steelville. The Steelville Cardinals made the trip. The 7th graders picked up a big win, 25-12, to run their record to 7-8 on the year. The 8th graders picked up a win to run their record to 10-6 on the season. The 8th graders won that game 28-14. Leaders for the Indians on the night, Aubrey Davis with 8 points and Emma Vondre with 11 points for the Indians. The season concludes this week for the middle school girls with a 7th grade contest on Monday against the Herman Bearcats, and Wednesday night is Pink Out night at Riverbend. 7th and 8th grade will take on Union to finish up their season. And after that, we will be starting up our winter sports season next week as well at Riverbend with wrestling tryouts and basketball tryouts starting on Monday. So we're wrapping up out at Riverbend, and now let's go to 425 Indian Warpath Drive to discuss all things Pacific High School athletics. So let's first start with cross country at their conference meet at Owensville this week. Let's jump right into the Four Rivers Conference honors for the JV girls. Sarah Halcomb is your winner of the Four Rivers Conference meet. Azaria Rosales third, and Gabby Brandon came in fourth for the JV Lady Indians. On the JV boys side of things, Frankie Bell came in sixth, and Gavin Moore finished ninth. Moving to the varsity, the Lady Indians on the varsity side of things, Maddie Rush was in ninth, Grace Dreyer 11th, Aiden Lawler 12th, Dixie Mayfield 13th. Those are all your medalists for the girls. On to the boys side of things, Ben Smith second, Dax Harrison sixth, and Lucas Godfrey seventh, all receiving medals for the boys cross-country team. The Indians prepare for districts this upcoming week. Hope to send a few people on to the sectionals after that, and maybe even all the way to the state tournament in Columbia. Congratulations to those athletes for medaling in the cross country, and for those that participated this season, as their season is now finishing up, and we look forward to winter sports on that side of things. Moving over to, let's talk about volleyball. Volleyball had their district this week, and they made the long trip on Tuesday night to Camdenton to face off against Lebanon in the 4-5 matchup. The Indians were victorious in this one, coming out with a win of 3-0 over Lebanon to advance to the semifinals on Thursday night against the 1-seeded Marshfield. The Indians made the long trip back down to Camdenton on Thursday to face Marshfield, and that one they ultimately dropped 3-1. The Indians battled and played really well against a very good Marshfield team. Football had a big win last night at St. James, pushing their record to 3-6 on the year and kind of setting them up for districts. The Indians were trailing 13-0, with 2:30 left in the first half, and managed to take a 21-13 lead into halftime. The Indians capitalized on some big plays, big turnovers, to give themselves a lead going into half and steal all the momentum away from the St. James Tigers. Some of you know it's very tough to play in St. James, it was nice for the Indians to make a run like that and have a lead at halftime. On the night, Brock McKinney had 14 carries for 94 yards. Seth Stack with 8 carries for 51 yards. Seth Stack was 13 for 21 through the air for 210 yards and 3 touchdowns. Leading the way on the receiving side of things for the Indians, Gavin Haddox with 3 catches for 82 yards. Leo Fiedler with 2 catches for 34 yards. Cam Dixon, 3 for 34. Colton Kasuth with 1 for 25. And Brock Webb, 3 for 34. Lucas McKinney had an interception, and Cam Dixon with a fumble recovery on the defensive side of things. The Indians now will face off against, and it's by the slimmest of margins, so I don't know that it's official until Monday, but as of right now, they will face Westminster. Westminster has, I believe, .13 more points than Union, so they will make the trip to Westminster. Sorry, Union has more than Westminster. Union has moved into the 3 seed. Sullivan is your 2, and Vianney sits at the 1 seed. So the Indians will travel to Westminster on Friday night on Halloween to take on Westminster and look to continue their season. If they were to win that, they would pick up a matchup with the Vianney Griffins as they sit at the 1 seed and have a bye going into the districts. This district is the Indians have played a lot of these teams in our conference already and played teams close. So I wouldn't count out the boys in this one. On to soccer. As soccer looks to wrap up their season, I believe the seed meeting is actually today, Saturday the 25th, as I am recording this. They took on Lutheran South this week, and they dropped that one 3-1 to a very good Lutheran South team. And then they knocked off Union on Thursday night to clinch the conference title. That conference championship win gives the Indians the 14-5 record on the season, and they face Windsor on Monday night. And then, like I said, we will wait for districts to come out. The districts are hosted by Webster Groves this year. The Indians, I think, slot into that 2-3 seed range. Potentially maybe see a matchup if they can get by the first round with a Webster team at their home place on the semis with a chance to punch the ticket to a district title game. Once we have more information on the district, we will have that in next week's episode as we wind down the fall sports season. There will not be a lot to talk about next week, so it'll be a very short episode, just kind of going over the districts and where everybody sits and maybe recap the football game from Friday night. With that being said, it is almost winter sports season. Winter sports is going to bring us cheer action, dance team, boys and girls basketball, and wrestling. And we will have a preview of that next week, just discussing a little bit of the winter sports and what we know. Performance of the week. My performance of the week this week will go to Seth Stack, throwing for 3 touchdowns and leading the Indians to a come-from-behind victory at St. James to finish off the regular season and put the Indians to 3-6, and they will match up with Westminster next week in districts. Congratulations to Seth for a big week for the Indians, 13 for 22, 3 touchdowns. As we wind down the fall sports season and we wait for the winter sports to start up with the games next, the other event we have going on is the Sports Club Music Trivia Night, November 8th at the Pacific Eagles. If you're interested in joining us that night for a little music trivia action and some karaoke, please go to PHS Athletics Facebook page for all information regarding Trivia Night. It's usually a pretty good time. We'd like to see everybody come out and join us for that event on November 8th. Before we wrap things up this week, just wanted to throw an update in the Pacific Indian soccer team drew the 3 seed in their district and will play Gateway/Soldan on Monday, November 3rd in the first round action. If they were to move on from that one, Webster Grove sits at the 2 seed and Rockwood Summit sits at the 1 seed. So that's just an update for you before we signed off this week. And until next week, keep up the chatter.